Mind is chief. Mind made are we. What a man ponders on and considers becomes the inclination of the mind. This is the first verse of the Dhammapada. And if you just take that verse and look up each word, you understand what the whole teaching is about. It has been made very complicated. What I mean is that if we remember, each individual sutta is a teaching that was directed towards someone who was gathered on that day in some Jetter's Grove or some park or some meditation center. But they all point back to, what are you thinking about? That's all the finger does, is points back to, what are you thinking about? And this is why I encourage testimonies like Amy's and others. Because what it tells us, number one, is it tells that mind who is obstinate and unbelieving that ordinary people can find peace and happiness and stresslessness right now, right here, in the midst of what the mind is telling us is an impossibility. When we turn on the news, we look at all of the horrible things that are going on in the world. And it's very difficult then for the mind to say, and everything is okay. But everything is okay. That's just the way the world is. The world has always been that way. Full of confusion, full of violence, both natural and man-made. And it will continue to be that way. And it's for us to try to find something positive in the middle of all of that mess. That's the challenge, but it's not a hard challenge. It's just something that has to be done. Because if I think about it being difficult, then that becomes the inclination of my mind. It is difficult. If I think that to find peace in the middle of all of this confusion, then it'll be difficult for me. And the ease of all of this is knowing that all I have to do is change the way I think about it, and the whole tapestry changes. And I don't have to change that. We're busy trying to change that through elections, through revolutions, through coups, through wars, through arguments with our parents or our loved ones or our partners. We're trying to change that. And all I have to do is change my mind. It doesn't get any simpler than that. The only reason I can't change my mind is that I don't believe I can change my mind. That I believe somehow that mind is autonomous and that I have no direct control over the mind. That the mind is something exogenous or extraneous to me, and it has a mind of its own. That's what we think. It has a mind of its own. But it doesn't. It thinks about what you think about. You're driven, you drive the mind. I don't know. I can't make it any simpler than that. Well, I don't want to make it any simpler than that because it gets no simpler than that. You drive the mind and the mind creates the Dhamma, creates the world that you live in. If you think it's horrible, it's going to be horrible. If you think it's hard to do, it's going to be hard to do. Mind is chief. Mind made are we. What we ponder on, reflect on, becomes the inclination, the leaning of the way the mind goes. Ask yourself, we've been working with the 5 faculties. And the first element of the 5 faculties are the factor of stream entry. And in stream entry, one of the factors of stream entry is practicing the Dhamma. And in the majority of suttas, this particular teacher, this Buddha, asked us to look at ourselves and look at our minds. And to try to understand the world as we create it and how we have the power to change the way we reflect and absorb and create our world so that it will be a place of peace and harmony. He tells us that even when things are violent, in the case of the simile of the saw, the sawing off a two-handled saw, somebody cutting us in half or sawing our limbs off, no matter what the visual and the informative is in the world, that when we carry with ourselves this love and this peace, that's what we will experience in that experience. Now it's hard for us to realize that, well, if somebody's mistreating us, if someone is being violent to us, that we can create a situation or scenario that is peaceful and tranquil and loving. It's hard for us to do that. But it is not because it is not something we can do. It's simply because we haven't done it. So that when situations and relationships roll out and unfold the way they do, we are trained, we are habitual in our response to react violently to protect ourselves. We see this all the time, every day in the news. Somebody feels that their answer to their own sadness, their own unhappiness, their own lack of serenity and peace is to be violent against what they consider the outside of themselves, the external of themselves. The sutta number 20 is called Distracting Thoughts. And it teaches us how to rein in the mind. It says initially that if you have a sign, if you're reflecting on a sign, which means if you have an object of your intention and your awareness, and you're looking at that, and in the process of looking at that, you encounter an unwholesome thought. That there's an unwholesome thought that arises and travels through the awareness of mind. That all you have to do is change what you're thinking about. See what it is that you're thinking about and change what you're thinking about. And when you do that, you will notice that your feeling, your attitude about the moment also changes. You do not have to struggle with the thought itself or even the content itself. You just introduce an alternative form of thought. As a man thinketh. And don't get hung up on the male thing. It's okay. Remember, in his Sangha, which included both male and female, he usually asked his senior disciples to teach the females. He was very careful about his association with the females of the Sangha. And he did not want any cross-pollination. So he asked his most trusted senior teachers to work with the females in the Sangha. And they were usually kept isolated. Now there are stories that are unflattering toward the females. In other words, when you read the attitudes of that day in contemporary lessons and teachings, it says that it is the females, or it's the fault of the female that causes the male to think the way he does about the female. Now that just sounds crazy right off the bat, right? So I'm just saying, just understand that these are some of the contemporary thoughts of that day about women. And that even when you go to India today, you will not find enlightened, aware, flattering image of females' worth coming from the males of India. It's real sad. The first time I went to India, I said, I was told that this is a spiritual place. And I just don't see it. But remember, this is also a culture that still has a caste system. So, it's very sad. But they believe that there's authority and spiritual direction behind the way they live and how they see people. And we find that everywhere in the world. One of the things that I haven't figured out yet is there are two schools of Islam, and they're both Islam, and they fight each other. I can't figure out why anybody fights anybody. No matter what theology we ascribe ourselves or lend ourselves to. On the other hand, I understand it because we fight ourselves. What I mean by that is even when we know that there is a way to do it, a better way to do it, we argue with ourselves and deny ourselves that better way. We have conflict with our brothers and sisters in the family and our fathers and mothers in the family. We disagree. So it is understandable that we will disagree with and fight strangers. Yeah. It's understandable. It doesn't make sense, but it's understandable. So the Buddha says, when we remove the tendency, the habitual tendency to be violent with ourselves and with those around us that we say we love, then we will be removing the violence from ourselves and from the world. As long as we feel, as long as we think that there is a situation that requires our violent reaction, there will be violence in the world. And the only way that we can remove violence from the world is removing violence from ourselves. So our mandate is to continue to patrol, not police, but patrol the contents of our mind. To stay there with those contents in every waking moment. To ensure that there is no opportunity for error to introduce itself and cause us to be unloving to ourselves, to our family, and to the whole world. That's the practice. That's our everyday, every moment practice. And we do that by I won't say controlling, because I don't like that word either. I'll use the word by selecting the quality of thoughts that serve us best and serves the world best. So, is there anyone who doesn't understand what I shared this morning? Who has some questions or some contradictions to what I shared this morning?
Thank you. It's not so much a contradiction, but it was an expectation that I had in applying this. I struggle with a work relationship, and I've been going into it knowing that I choose how I'm going to react, how I'm going to be, how I'm going to relate. And in applying these practices, I thought, when this person ticks me off, how am I going to genuinely make that shift and catch that aggressive, defensive reaction? And what has completely shocked me is that in doing that practice and experiencing that aggression coming at me and choosing to see what I value in that person, to see the things I love in that person, and to come from there, react from there, I thought it would be fake. I thought, okay, so I'm going to get ticked off, but I'm going to decide not to be ticked off, and I'm going to pretend that it's all good. Mm-hmm. And what actually happened is it genuinely was good. Mm-hmm. I didn't expect that of myself. And then it also changed them. Mm-hmm. And what happened next. Mm-hmm. But it was discovering that it was genuine. And I'm assuming that my practice that I have really expanded and committed to daily, and that constant mindfulness and watching helped that to be genuine for me. But it surprised me. I thought it would be more like pretending to, send love. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course, until we utilize the practice and insert it into our moment-by-moment life, we have these preconceived notions about how it will be. Yeah? So, one of the encouragements is to don't believe what the mind tells you will be the experience until you have the experience yourself. Go into the experience. This is one of the things about mindfulness, remember, is about not having any preconceived opinions about what the next moment will be. We just don't know what the next moment will be. But to go into it with the heart of love and the mind unaffected by insult and see. We think that we have to do it this way, or we have to look at it this way, or this is the way I'll feel about it if this person says this. Well, that's ordinariness. That's the way we thought about it yesterday, right? So we are encouraged to live differently in the next moment, to not go into the next moment with that attitude or with that chip on our shoulder or that fear that says, when I go into this is what will happen, and this is what I'll say, and this is what they'll say, and this is the way I'll feel about it. We have then created the day, the moment, without even living in it. And this is a part of the error. Not ERA, but ERROR. Of moment by moment life. And this is how we've tainted and created this this falsity about how life can be and how relationships can be. And that I always have to get angry if somebody insults, or I define the moment as an insulting moment. But remember what the sutras also teach us. It says that no matter how a person comes to you in their own conversation, whether it be respectful or disrespectful, that I don't have anything to do with that. What I have to do, my job is to make sure that my mind does not react. That I am very careful about the words react and respond. That I respond a way, I don't react. Because that defines the energy, right? So it says, do not let your mind be affected. And with loving kindness for them, starting with them, that person that's right in your face, extend loving kindness to the whole world. Well, I can't hate and love at the same time. That's an impossibility. So if my mandate, my practice, my decision is to love, then hate can't even arise in the mind, in consciousness. So I don't pollute the moment with my stuff. And as you learned and as you said, this also changes the way the other person. But now be careful, it might not. It might not. But we learn something from that too, because we learn that when we deal with people with conditions, like, well, I'm going to be nice to you so that you will be nicer to me, that when I relate to you with that condition, I will be disappointed. It sets up a falsity right in and of itself. It's ingenuous right there in and of itself. I'm not being honest. And if I'm not being honest, I should not expect the energy of honesty to come back to me. I'm trying to manipulate the other person. Oh, I'm being nice, I'm being kind, I'm being loving. Yeah?
And that's what I used to do. Mm-hmm. And it took so much energy, and it wasn't genuine. And so that's why the shift has been so interesting.
Yeah.
And positively reinforcing as well.
You've taken your control back.
Yeah.
Taking your life back.
And my energy back. I mean, I put so much energy into that. It was draining.
Yeah.
Physically, mentally, and it was taking me away from all the good things that I wanted to be doing. And that affected them too in the same way as well. So thank you.
No, thank you. And again, I appreciate and encourage what in Baptist church is called testimony, because it gives the rest of us who haven't had the courage to just be vulnerable, to take that shield from around their heart. Because it's like, well, they might hurt me if I do this. They might do this or that to me. Well, they might do that anyway. So, thank you. And thank you again. You gave a beautiful testimony on Sunday.
She inspired me.
All right. Okay. Well, remember, one of the factors of stream entry is association with good friends. Friends who are examples, yes, who are courageous and brave with their love, not with their fists. You know. We should give a medal of honor for love, right? We should have parades on Valentine's Day, not on days when people come back from wars. So, anyway, that's just me. All right. Anyone else? Yes.
At the start, you talked about how the world is in chaos. It will be and always has been.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading a book once which talked about interreligious dialogue, and there was a Buddhist monk and a Catholic priest, and the question was, is the world unbalanced?
Mm-hmm.
And the Buddhist monk says, no, the world is what it is. The Catholic priest says, yes, there's a problem between poverty and richness, etc. So how do we take this loving kindness, accepting the world as it is, but not condoning the way the world might be? What can we do about that?
That's a good question. You do what you can do. In other words, if the world were perfect, then there would be no work to do. There would be no school to attend. There would be no conflict within us as individuals as to who we share with and who we take away from. But because the world is perfect, exactly as it is, it gives each and every one of us the opportunity to be the human that we were here to do, that we came here to be. You know, I read a book once. And it explained why God created others. And the explanation was that if there was only God, then God would not know God. But because there's all of this imperfection, then God can see God and God can see not God or ungod. And all of us have the opportunity to choose. Like Luke, about whether we want the dark side or whether we want the light. But if there was only goodness and balance, there'd be nothing to do. We'd all be sitting around eating Cheetos, watching cartoons, because there would be nothing to do. This is why the world is the way the world is, to give us choices so that we can find out not who God is, but who we are. That's my opinion. Okay. Anyone else?
Well, a couple of things come to mind here in this, hearing the questions that have come up. And one is how we really are not our emotions. And a couple of weeks ago, I think, Deepa, you were talking about when unwholesome arises, just make the choice to replace it with wholesome. Mm-hmm. And I had a beautiful opportunity to practice this yesterday. And it was, nothing was different, nothing was going wrong in my life. But for some reason, I had one of those days that had emotional angst to it. And in the past, my mind has always thought, okay, I'm feeling this way, so what's wrong? And then I'd start thinking, looking to put a blame out there in the world somewhere on what's wrong. And then I don't know what I was going to do with it, chew on it or something, if I found it. But something clicked of this is an unwholesome emotion/thought. And it's a moment where I could make a choice. And I chose to just replace it with wonderful. And I'm babysitting the Dharma dog who lives here on campus. And she's a unconditional love factory. And so looking into the eyes of that little being, seeing all that love, and watching my whole emotional state shift. Because I chose to uproot unwholesome, which is just darkness, with the flashlight of truth, which is the love and the wholesome. And it was like, yeah, this stuff works. It's so beautiful. And I'm so grateful. Thank you so much, Deepa, for pointing us that way.
All right. So again, mind is chief. Mind made are we. Mind made are we. There you go. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And let's go inside and uproot and ignore and abandon the darkness. One of the things to be careful about is negative self-talk. Negative self-talk. That's the thing to be very careful about. Because again, mind made are we. So if I'm thinking negatively about myself or about you or about the world, then this is what I will see. If I think it's going to be bad, it's going to be bad. If I think I'm not going to enjoy this day, I'm not going to enjoy this day. I'm going to find something to pick on, to snark about, to complain about. I'm going to do that. Yes.
So what you're saying, Venerable, is that if I'm understanding it, and I've been thinking about this, a feeling is looking for something to grasp onto, and then it can grasp onto something. Or a mental factor is looking for something to grasp, so then the tendency of the mind when it's going negative will grasp onto something and then play it out, possibly?
No, I'm not saying that.
You're not saying that?
No. I'm saying that everything that you think of as reality is created by your internal consciousness. If it thinks it's good, it's good. If I think it's bad, it'll be bad. Unless I realize the way it works, and then I begin to choose what I choose, as opposed to allowing anything that arises to be my reality. That I can deny dark reality by just saying I don't want that. I'm not going to deal with that.
I'm
And I can create in that next empty moment something different, something better. Yes, I have a choice. You have a choice, I have a choice, everybody has a choice. So there's no reason for us to be unhappy and have a long face, no matter what is going on. Okay. Let's go inside and sweep out the mind. Clean it up. For those who don't have any testimony to make yet, be patient. And remember the habits we have are lifelong habits. We've had them forever. We've struggled with them forever. We've watched them grow. We've fed them mushrooms forever. So that the mind, this whole inner worldly thing is just not going to turn around just because you want it to. It requires love and kindness from you, and nurturing and cultivation and watering and weeding. So, put in your time. I'm hoping that everyone is getting in at least some meditation in the morning and at night. Because this is about feeding the mind. This is about you inserting the intention that you want the mind to have. And it's going to get everything from out here. But the caretaking, the selection of information can be yours and should be yours. But there has to be this willingness and this desire to put into mind exactly what you want the mind to be, exactly who you want to be in the world, to construct or reconstruct. Remember, it's not about destroying, it's not about deconstructing. It's just about choosing something different to think about. So make sure that you get some loving kindness going in the morning and some loving kindness going in the night. And pretty soon, that will be the inclination of your mind. Thank you so much for everything you do, all your support. May all beings be free from suffering. May we be well. May we be happy. May we be peaceful. Thank you so much. Be nice.